Susan Riedel is a career prosecutor who also faced personal tragedy in 2004 when her husband was killed by a drunk driver. She's a close ally of Governor Susana Martinez, working with her when the governor was the Doña Ana County District Attorney, and Ms. Martinez appointed her to fill a district judge vacancy in 2011, but Ms. Riedel lost her re-election bid. In her campaign for Attorney General, Ms. Riedel has focused on her experience prosecuting criminals and advocating for victims. As such, she has also prioritized the role of Attorney General as the state's top crime fighter.
Susan Riedel, thank you so much for being with us today. You have said that Gary King is not responsive to the people as an Attorney General, but in what specific ways would you be more responsive?
To the people in general? Well, I would like it. I mean, something as simple as making sure you can get to a real person when you call the Attorney General's office. You know, we all know what it's like to go through those automated phone systems, and your answer is never, you know, pick the one where your problem is, and your problem is never in there, so you just start punching numbers. I mean, something as simple as that. But I'd also really like to make sure that when cases are going on that are of great public interest, that I do as much as I can to make sure that the public is informed about why we're making certain decisions. You know, law is not all that as entertaining as it looks on TV, but I think it would help if people know, you know, we're looking into settling this case, or we're looking into arguing it this way, just to try and help people to understand. That'll depend a lot on making sure that people have access to that information.
You've spent more than 25 years as an assistant district attorney, chief deputy district attorney, a stint as a district court judge. But your opponent, Hector Balderas, says that gives you a narrow perspective of the job of top cop, and that the job requires someone with a broader background. What do you think of that?
Well, I don't know what broader background you can get to be top cop than somebody who's been the top cop or second top cop for years. And also, as a district court judge, I was not strictly doing criminal cases. Actually, I did domestic relations cases. And I will tell you that one of the most rewarding things about that was the ability to really help children in that job as well. I mean, that was my passion as a prosecutor, was child abuse cases and making sure that I was a voice for little kids. And as a judge, I got to make sure that children were not the pawns in the great chess game of divorce.
You worked on the famous Baby Brianna case, described as one of the worst child abuse cases the country has seen. And you have pointed out that we have one of the highest rates of rape, domestic violence, and child abuse in the country, here in New Mexico. As Attorney General, what would you do to prevent violence against women and children that Gary King hasn't done?
Well, I think one of the things you can do is just make sure that women, children, victims, people who are potential victims, are educated on their options. A lot of that stems from people feeling helpless where they are. It can stem from your status in the country. It can stem from economic dependence on the person who's being abusive. And I think that those victims need to know that there's a place they can go before things get way out of control to protect themselves. That's one thing we can do, is to reach out to people. Then you just have to have strong prosecution. You know, you can protect people by making it clear publicly what's going to happen to you if you commit that crime. And if we have a strong prosecutor, that's a wonderful way to prevent crime.
In 2004, your husband was killed by a drunk driver while you were on a family vacation. Aside from the devastating personal consequences of that, did it change your perspective on New Mexico's longtime struggle to prevent driving while intoxicated?
What it really changed my perspective on is that we need to make sure that people understand just how dangerous this really is and how totally random it is. From a prosecutor's perspective, really what it made me understand was that you need to make sure victims understand what you're talking about, and people who have been through serious tragedy like that, and I was one of them. You would think that of all the people that they were explaining what was about to happen in the judicial system, that I would get it, and you just don't listen at all. So one of the things that really focused me in on is how important it is to make sure to make victims of crime comfortable speaking to the prosecutor, asking the questions over and over again, and maybe telling them over and over again just to make sure that it's getting through.
How can you do that? Is that a training issue, or, I mean, how can you make that better?
It's an empathy issue. I think people think prosecutors aren't empathetic to what's going on, and I think we're some of the most empathetic people there are. Number one, because we work with people, the victims that come to us are in the worst situations of their life. We would hope that that's as worst as ever going to get for them. But I also think because we spend a lot of time determining who to prosecute as well. One of the reasons I became a prosecutor was because I knew that I could ensure that people who shouldn't be prosecuted wouldn't be prosecuted, whereas on the defense side, all you can do is react to what the prosecution does. So I think there is a lot of empathy, sympathy, and value to the 25 years of experience that I've had in working with victims and in protecting the rights of all people.
Governor Martinez nominated you for a district judgeship,
Yes.
But when you had to then run for the seat, you were not elected.
That's true.
What happened?
Oh, it was really, I'm telling you, strictly an R versus D thing. Doña Ana County is very heavily Democrat. I think it was 2012, and I would say nationwide, people with Republican behind their name didn't do very well. So I don't take it personally at all. And in a judge race, they're a little vanilla because you can't have opinions really, because you're going to remain fair and impartial about everything. So people can't come up and say how you're going to rule in DWI cases or anything like that, because you have to keep that mindset. So it really did come down to, let's look at the ballot and who's a D and who's an R. I'm absolutely convinced of it. All of the people who were Republicans really lost by just about the same margin. So.
Mm-hmm. You've said that the state needs an attorney general who is supportive of its elected officials. But you also say that rampant political corruption has left us with a system that benefits a small and powerful few. Mm-hmm. So how do you figure out who needs the support and who's corrupt?
Well, you figure out who's corrupt first, and then you get rid of them, and then you make sure that the officials that are in there who are doing their job properly and by law get the legal support, the good legal advice that they need from an attorney general who knows what they're talking about. And that you're willing to tell people, no, we're not going to do that because that's not okay, that's not the way to accomplish that, and help them find solutions. That's really what you're looking for. If somebody's politically corrupt, you don't help them, you prosecute them, and you get them out. You let the people know that their trust has been abused.
You've had a lot of support from the governor.
I do have a lot of support from the governor.
Would you feel that you needed to support her in return if you won this office?
I've worked with Governor Martinez. I was her chief deputy district attorney for 14 years. And I think that our philosophies are certainly very similar. And that's one of the reasons that I think we would be a strong team together. But you don't get to be a governor of the caliber of Governor Martinez without people who are willing to tell you no. We're not going to do that. So absolutely, I'm going to be able to tell her no. I'm going to be able to give her the strong advice she needs. I'm going to find pathways for her if she wants to accomplish something and I agree with her that it's the right path to take, then I'm going to help her get there.
A super PAC funded by the Democratic Attorneys General Association has booked at least $350,000 in TV ads for your opponent. Do you think you can overcome his advantage in fundraising and advertising?
I would hope that people are going to look at who's qualified for this job and not who can put on the slickest ad or who can run the most ads. I think they need to look at who they want in that position. When you hire somebody to do a job, you're looking for the person with the best qualifications, not the person that looks the best or the fanciest suit.
You grew up outside of Cincinnati.
I did.
You've been here at least 3 decades. You met your husband here. What have you come to appreciate most about New Mexico?
Oh, it's just beautiful. I mean, this is the most beautiful place. That's what made me stay. When I came to New Mexico, and when I was clerking that second summer, nobody really told me that I thought I was going to see the Roadrunner and coyote kind of landscape. I came here because I thought it would be a wonderful place to experience. And then I got here and the Sandia Mountains were right there, and I was like, well, nobody told me that. It's just gorgeous. I'm a hiker, so I spend a lot of time in the desert, and I admire the grit of the desert, and I think that grit is very much matched by our people. We're a tough group.
You told me before we started taping you've spent most of your career paying your own salary.
Yes, I have.
Working for the public. What drives you to public service?
What drives me to public service? It's so rewarding. My late husband was a private attorney, and he enjoyed that job for some time. He was also a financial advisor as well. But I think it's just really feeling like I'm doing a service for people. I wasn't driven by any kind of need for accolades. You know, when you live in a smaller town, you do get a little well known if you're a lead prosecutor like that, but that really wasn't what was going on. It was just a passion, truly a passion for standing up and being the voice of people who didn't have a voice, who had had so many awful things happen to them.
Susan Riedel, thank you so much for being with us today.
You're welcome.